it sounds like in your story, at the end of the day, you had an idea, a plan, and you're like, uh-oh, the market is telling you something completely different, and that's scary in the moment. But maybe you used a little bit of motivation to help you figure out a new path, an easier path at the end of the day.
When I truly became an entrepreneur and I had to get creative, what resources or skills or advantages do you have in your market? And how can you capitalize on that by adding value to others?
In the old school way, which is if you're an entrepreneur, you are creating something or you are creating a better version of something out there based on market need to be competitive, and that the entity, the enterprise, has value in and of itself.
It's interesting when you live a purpose-driven work life, it fills you up to do the work that you do, and it doesn't drain you. And I've heard many people say, how do you work 50 plus hours a week? And I was like, because it's fun. Josh, welcome. So just to kind of do a few introductions, Wendy, she is a friend and colleague from back in the day when I worked at the Siegfried Group in downtown Wilmington. And we kind of reconnected and decided, hey, let's do this show where we're going to talk about, entrepreneurs and high-level executives and, what's going on inside their heads, what they're thinking or feeling or talking to themselves. I call it the voice inside your head. What's it telling you? And really kind of exploring those against the backdrop of times in your life as an entrepreneur or a high-level executive that you've gone through. And what did, the voice in your head or the feelings that you were having, how was that showing up in the real world, essentially? And then Josh is a friend of mine from the Middletown, Townsend area. We are connected through family, friends. I believe your wife actually works with my brother-in-law or is somehow connected, right?
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. So Josh, I wanted to have you on today really just to kind of explore your, journey of entrepreneurship. I guess where we kind of can start is at the beginning. So before you really became an entrepreneur and, getting to know you and being friends over the past couple of years, you didn't just start out as, hey, I'm going to jump into being an entrepreneur. It was a little bit more of a side hustle. So would love to just know that story of working a W-2 job and what that kind of looked like in the beginning.
Now, I'll tell you, it's been a journey. I don't think of myself as old, but now that I look back on time, I'm like, you know what? 10 years out of college, like a lot can happen, a whole other phase of my life. Interestingly enough, though, I come from a entrepreneurial background. My dad and my uncle owned a family business, a local one, a pretty big flooring company. And when I was being raised, I had two older brothers. So I was the third. I was the one who always got good grades. I always did the right thing. I would follow the rules. And my path was almost not so to the business. It was, hey, follow the playbook, get good grades, get a good education, get a good job, which is kind of the flip-flop of what you would think it would be, right? Coming from a successful entrepreneur. But I did just that. I got out of school, got a good job at Citibank, worked my way up the ladder. I had pretty much could have gone as high as I wanted to if I stuck it out. But I always knew, coming from having a dad as an entrepreneur who was flexible and controlled his time and was able to be at all my games, I just knew that was never going to work. And when I was looking up at my boss and my boss's bosses and my boss's boss's boss, their work-life balance was none. Even if they were on vacation, they were still on work calls. They were still held to certain timelines and deadlines and such. So I just knew long-term, especially when I got into having a family of my own, it just wasn't going to work and I was going to have to figure out something else. So real estate was actually the vehicle that I discovered during college. My family didn't really have any real estate investment background, but during college, my current business partner and I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And really it's about the benefits of, not just real estate, but being your own boss and the tax benefits, all that kind of stuff. And that really hit home. I was like, you know what? Real estate's the way. I'm going to buy myself out of my job down the road. So that was always like the seed was planted. It was a matter of how long is it going to take me to get there. And, fortunately, it took me 7 years of doing both real estate and the W-2 job to finally be able to cut the cord and go full-time entrepreneur. So it was a long journey, but it's
Sure.
it's I don't know that many people have done it, and I'm glad I did it as young as I did, because if I had kids before I tried, man, that would be an uphill battle. So it was quite the journey, man, and still continuing now, just new challenges.
Yeah. You let's talk about, so 2015 is when you had started at Citibank. Is that correct?
Yep.
And that's also the
Yep.
year that you started your kind of real estate investing company, or real estate company. So did you just decide right out of college, you were like, hey, I'm going to buy a place and try to figure this out? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, that was the plan. So I have my business partner I went to college with. We played soccer together. We graduated together. The plan was I was going to get the W-2 gig. So I moved back home, got a good job, and we always thought, all right, one of us has to have a really good W-2. That way we can qualify for loans and we can continue to, buy more property. So we bought our first property in 2016. And things were going slow. We were learning. It was hard, long nights of trying to take courses to learn what the heck we're doing. A lot of trial and error. Didn't really have a whole lot of money saved up. Didn't know the strategies we know today. So it was always, hey, we have to save up X amount, 20% down to be able to buy something, and then, save up again for the next one. And it took us a little while. I mean, first, second year, technically we bought one. Then the next year we bought two. And then we found some other strategies to be able to buy rental properties without having cash of our own parked in the deal. And that's where our business kind of took off. We pretty much doubled every year, got to like 50 units in 2022. And that's when I found out I was having the twins. And that's when I said, all right, it's time to go all in. I have a good enough foundation. It's time to cut the cord and go for it.
Okay.
Wendy, I'm curious, I don't know if we ever talked about this. Are you in real estate investing at all yourself?
Well, I mean, actually, it's interesting. I do have three real estate assets, right? But it actually demonstrates the mindset about real estate, which is what you are describing, Josh, right? Because in the beginning, too, it could be, oh, I'm going to do 20% down typically, then I'm going to either rent it out. Maybe you were considering flipping it. How are we going to make this happen? And for me, I would say that mine had to do with, which again, Rich Dad Poor Dad would argue, of course, the house you live in should not be considered an asset. So put that aside. And then I do own a lot. But at the time I purchased it, it was with the idea to build on it. And at this point, it's up for sale and has been there, but as an investment, if you will. And then I have a second vacation home that is a short-term rental, which, in this market now, everyone's like, ooh, the rules, if you can, demonstrate that you work 100 hours a year and all, there's all of these things that are coming around in terms of, working with the tax code to figure out how to think about real estate. So I would say I just, as a person trying to diversify and be, a smart investor or smart, for our family, that's one way of thinking. But that actually leads me into, for you, when you started doing it and you said, I want to buy my way out of a job, I wrote it down what you said. Were you thinking about it as I'm going to create passive income while I work? Like, were you thinking of it like a business, or were you thinking about it as a series of investments and assets, almost like I just described, because it would be good for, your family's wealth? But that's very different than thinking of it like a business.
Yeah, I would say it was probably a mix. My core goal was I need the monthly income. So the goal was, all right, I need to buy as many rentals as possible to be able to cash flow X on each, to then be able to get me close to what I was making salary wise, cover my expenses to get out. But at the same time, I knew, all right, well, if I'm giving up a nice 401k and matches, these things obviously are going to appreciate over time. So, at least I have that, the longer you hold real estate, the better off you're going to be. And I was very fortunate with the ride I was on with when I bought. So that's helped me out a ton. But I think it was both. I always knew that's going to be, when I think of my family business, they went through a buy-sell situation with my brothers and my cousins. And I just kind of saw how singly invested my dad was in his business, and how the moment you have a family business, it kind of gets a little sticky of, all right, well, he wants to get the max out of this thing when he sells it. And my brothers want the best discount possible so that they can survive the business. So I
Sure.
always thought of real estate as, look, I now have individual assets that come the time. If I went down the road, I can just sell a couple and I'll get my profit there and I can, do as I sow with. So I think the flexibility of knowing I can always sell those assets down the road as part of my retirement was definitely attractive.
Yep. Which
That's
makes that
really
industry
interesting.
unique.
That's so I'm curious. So you had talked about, hey, kind of cutting the cord when you were expecting twins, which made me think back to when I got started and was going to have Rylan. Michelle really telling me I needed to figure my crap out at the time because I wasn't really that happy. So two things. One, well, we'll start with the first one. What were Jamie's thoughts, your wife, when you were going through that?
She knew that was always the vision long term. There's no doubt. Finding out we were having twins, I think we weren't really sure what to expect. We just both knew we had to be both hands on deck. So thankfully, I had the proof of concept. I had enough where I could say, like, look, I think we'll be okay. And with the thought, if I have more time to do it, we'll make more. I'll have more time at home. So she was all on board. I can't imagine if she wasn't fully on board with it. I don't think I would have made it. I don't think I would have made the decision. Having her support and backing was, I think, what I needed to actually have the confidence to say, all right, I can do it. That yes, there's pressure, but she was fully supportive, knowing that we're going to figure it out.
Crucial. Josh, can you say a little bit? You've mentioned a partner in this story, that you were in college, and again, one of you had to do the W-2 to start, so that you were kind of getting the capability to get capital. So tell me about how you work. I mean, you're still in partnership, or
Yep.
did something change? Say a little bit about that partnership and how it best works relative to your business.
I would have never been able to scale without him because I was so busy doing my day job. So he was boots on the ground. I was the one really coming up, either raising money from others and or bringing my W-2 to be able to get loans. I was doing a lot of back end, and he was boots on the ground. He was finding the deals. So, both of us really wouldn't have been able to grow as fast as we did without each other. And me especially, because technically that was secondary to my job because I was doing well. I was getting promotions. I was kind of getting distracted by, that I got a job in New York for a little while during COVID. So I was a little bit blurred. I'm not going to lie. So COVID kind of came and squashed that because then we had to work from home, and it reminded me, oh my gosh, what am I doing? This is definitely not what I want to do without, the glamour of traveling. So, without him, I tell him it all the time. I'm like, I'm so grateful for him to stick it out as long as he did. Because I can't say I was, we were 50-50, but he was definitely doing 70% and I was doing 30%, maybe.
Right. Though
But
there was a strategy, right? Like, I mean, you said strategically, I'd be curious, would he have proceeded, or would you guys have been on the trajectory if you said, okay, I'm all in as well? That W-2, based on what you're sharing, was pretty important to not just you personally, but the business as well, or not so much?
Yeah, it definitely was. And I think the only reason we were able to grow is because we found out ways to, buy real estate without our own money and kind of get out of the real estate when we kept it as a rental without having 20% parked. So we were finding distressed assets. We were buying them with private money. So family, friends money. We were borrowing short-term money. We were fixing it up, adding value, building equity. And then we'd go to a bank and get a longer term loan. And, the difference between what the value was worth now and what we were all in for was kind of a wash. So we'd end up paying our investors back. And then Alex and I didn't have to put 20% down because the 20% was the equity we built by doing the rehab, buying at a good discount. So that's really where we were able to start scaling. But at that point, my W-2 was kind of worthless. So it got to the phase when we got to maybe like 10 or 12 units. I kind of said in my mind, like, oh yeah, I'm still doing it for that. But, it wasn't really the truth. We found other ways to do it without needing our, having the W-2. And the banks, once you have enough properties and enough assets, they kind of know, all right, they know what they're getting into. They know that we have experience, and then they're just looking at the property. So it was good though, because neither of us had to rely on the business's income. And that's why I think we were able to grow a little quicker. I didn't need it because I had my W-2. He was, still staying at home, for a couple more years than I did. He was saving up. He was doing some agent stuff on the side. So it really helped the business accounts grow so that when the time did come for us to, either invest more in the business and actually park some money in bigger deals and or get me out, we had that cushion in the reserves to do so.
Oh, yeah. I want to also just come back to when you made the leap. Michelle and I just talked about who she works for does their benefits enrollment now, because they'll start, I think, in July with their fiscal year. And, working where she works, great benefits at the end of the day, health insurance, a lot of 401k, there's FSA, there's childcare, and you start doing all those calculations. A lot of pre-tax dollars benefits that can be made. But when you're an entrepreneur and you make that leap, you lose all those benefits of your W-2. So I'm curious. Obviously you're in real estate investing, so you think about investments and how are they. What return are you getting? When you made that leap, what were you risking, and how did you come up with a financial plan to start kind of getting back to the new financial plan for you that would be taking into account, funding things like your retirement and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing my boss told me, and I was very close with him, I gave Citibank like a year heads up. They had to keep me through my paternity leave, kept me with pretty much with a bonus, and said, just help us out a couple more months. So they knew well in advance. But my boss said, look, Josh, the way it works here is I could give you as much money as you want now, but I'm capped. I can only give you so much because you're internal. So your worst case scenario when you leave is it doesn't work out. You can go do your thing for 6 months, come back to me, and I'd probably pay you 50 grand more than what I could have given you right now. So really, it's in your best interest to go. And your worst case is you come back doing the same thing, making a whole lot more money. So when he kind of told me that, I'm like, okay, what do I really have to lose then? I mean, it's pretty ridiculous that's the case, but at those bigger banks, that's how it is. At the time with kids, I wasn't really sure how much things cost. I wasn't sure how much daycare cost. My wife was working and still is working for a little bit longer. So we at least had two incomes. And the rentals gave me enough to feel comfortable, but retirement was back burner. It was, look, let's just get through. Income is first priority. Let's focus on that for a year or two, build up. I also didn't know what the new norm was going to be. My thought getting out was, all right, we'll get into bigger deals. The deal flow was great at the time when I quit. We had a bunch of projects going on. And then 3 months after I quit, we went from having like 8 projects that we were doing and, we were paying investors back and then we were renting out to then we had like 1 deal. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought we were about to buy like another 20 this year. Rates started climbing quick. It was at that time. So things kind of changed, but with that came opportunity. In my new business, which we've taken off the ground in private lending. So what we knew was we had a good thing in terms of private money, which we were using to buy all of our deals. And when our deal flow shrank, the money was still there. And our investors were pretty much asking us like, hey, when's the next deal coming? And we're like, oh man, we're missing something. If we don't find something for ourselves to put these people into, they're going to go find something else, right? They got so used to our return, but they also can't sit idle. So we had the idea of, why don't we just be the lender? Why don't we connect our investors with other real estate investors in our market who are doing fix and flips and, see what they're doing. And most other people, they didn't spend the time to build relationships for their own deals to raise money. They were just going to like a formal private lender in the area or a national company and paying outrageous fees to get these loans. Because most of the time, you need money in like 2 weeks for a good real estate deal. It means it's off market, has to be cash, has to close quick. So a lender can charge more. Yeah. So we kind of piloted a couple of loans. So we talked to our investors, letting them know like, look, we don't have a deal, but we know, really good acquaintance of ours is doing this deal right here. And I think it'd be a good opportunity for you. And they're like, well, I don't know them. Like, if you sit in the middle, sure, we'll do it. So we piloted that a couple times, and we kind of made an arbitrage of a spread. So we lend out at X and we give our investor Y, and we make the difference. And both the loans, our first two loans, went super well. And Alex and I are thinking, we're like, man, that was a whole lot easier than doing the rent, doing the flip ourselves, finding the deal, doing all the work for a little bit more. We're like, man, I think this could actually be something we could scale. So, in light of what looked like a scary moment there of, oh my gosh, man, I was expecting a whole lot of growth with purchasing more rentals and that replacing my income, came a whole different opportunity that I was not expecting. But I wouldn't have known that was even an opportunity if I wasn't full time, because I didn't know what other people in my market were doing to buy their deals.
That's right.
It's interesting. It makes me think back to one of the people I reported to at the Siegfried Group sat me down one time and said a phrase to me. Said, Jeremy, fear can be a heck of a motivator. And it sounds like in your story, at the end of the day, you had an idea, a plan, and you're like, the market is telling you something completely different. And that's scary in the moment. But maybe you use a little bit of motivation to help you figure out a new path, an easier path at the end of the day.
100%. When I left Citi, I told my wife, yes, we have cash flow from these assets. But deep down, I'm like, oh, we could find money another way. Like, that was my motivation was, all right, how can we get creative? Because up to that point, I wasn't really an entrepreneur, right? I was still used to the W-2 life. I was leaning on my partner a lot. I didn't need to I was able to rely on a paycheck is what it is. That's what I was living off of. So when I made the jump, I really think that's when I truly became an entrepreneur, and I had to get creative. What resources or skills or advantages do you have in your market? And how can you capitalize on that by adding value to others, which for us was adding value to our investors by keeping their money moving, and kind of connecting them with other people in my market who were in need of capital to continue to grow their portfolios. So we kind of found this like perfect safe haven right in the middle that is super scalable. And honestly, that's probably my favorite part, because I'm not really I don't love construction. Like, I'll manage a couple flips here and there for fun, but that's not really my forte. That's not my background. So I get a whole lot more value and appreciation in being a relationship guy. And that's really what I get to do now.
So what's amazing? So I can't wait, Josh, actually for you to see this, podcast back. I think that you will see evidence of it. How you were speaking about the business prior to that moment when you said, I think I became an entrepreneur when, and you started describing the questions you were answering, what were you thinking about, and even your language around, again, leverage, meeting opportunity, like there was a need, and to fill it, like that does, like it actually, even like the persona around you felt so much more entrepreneurial than starting off of, how am I going to create work-life balance? I've got this, again, great relationships, which you've had. You had this, college buddy partnership, your wife's supportive, even your Citibank boss, super supportive, right? Giving you all the signals like, hey, you've got a nice safety net here, which then maybe didn't feel as much of a leap. I mean, you were working for it, but also trying to understand real estate. And there's a lot of people out there trying to figure out how to invest, how to, again, create long-term wealth. And we're looking at a variety of strategies, not knowing about the future. And so when I hear people that are doing real estate, that doesn't make them entrepreneurial. It might make them, maybe a smart investor. They're more astute, they're interested. Maybe they're trying to create more freedom of time or reliance or dependency. But now you went into creating, there was a market need. What do we do? How can we fill it? And you heard what your relationships were saying is like, hey, we don't know them, but we know you. And you created something. And you said, we created value in a different way. And I think that is what entrepreneurialism is. And you use the word create. It's creative. And we do, my opinion, we throw around solopreneur all the time, which are like, can be some side hustles and things. I mean, it sounds sexier and that's great. But, I was raised in the old school way, which is if you're an entrepreneur, you are creating something or you are creating a better version of something out there based on market need to be competitive, and that the entity, the enterprise, has value in of itself outside of the people working inside of it and on it. And so that's kind of what I heard. So I just want to reflect that back, because I think it's an important distinction when we throw these words out around. And I love how that part of that story works for you, and also how we can see the journey, because some people don't necessarily go in it thinking it's going to happen a certain way, but are you there and you're ready to meet the moment, and how are you thinking about it? What's your mindset is what makes all the difference. And it was just great to watch you speak of it. So I'm excited for you to watch yourself as well.
I'm glad you're going to remind me to do that, because I was just talking. I'm like, oh, well, the truth is the truth,
It sounded good. I mean, it sounded really good. And I do want to ask, because I did go to your website, SPG Capital, and we were talking about, benefits, or you were going there, Jeremy, for sure. And these are important aspects of, what needs for family. But you have a couple of roles posted out there that you're looking to hire, or at least they were posted on the site. I don't know how current, that did list out some benefits. If I think I have the right site. Is this true? Do you have employees?
Yeah, we do. We do
have your partner.
Yeah, we do have an employee, actually a pretty recent one as well, for the lending company, and it's a controller, and she has been a godsend. So that's probably phase 2. Is this whole lending company was just Alex and I. The rentals we've been able to kind of streamline. We have a property manager, so that business is kind of operating in of itself. We have weekly calls, but that's kind of going on its own, which is great. Then we started this lending company, and the first step is learn everything you possibly can, because now this is a whole new thing, right? How many people do I need to get some guidance from? How do I find the best partners in terms of an attorney? How do I find the best people to lend to? So kind of figuring it out as you go, by necessity, and pretty much troubleshooting along the way to make sure you're doing things the right way, even though you're probably not. And then you kind of get a little bit better each time. And then it was, all right, now I'm too busy. Now I've almost worked myself into another job. It's time to now find someone who can do it better than me. And, a lot of the lending space is great because it's simply just transactional, right? Besides relationships, I just need to be able to move money around a lot. I need to be able to do a lot of cash management, and I need someone who can really be available during the day to send wires out, review closing docs, really just day-to-day work. And I can't do what I do best, which is continue to grow relationships, continue to find investors, if I'm doing that. So that was kind of phase 2, which we just hired her technically part-time last year. And then she started full-time in January, and she has been a godsend. So now I'm almost at like this next phase of, well, now I have my time back again. Yeah. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's interesting. 2 things again are coming up for me. One, the idea of Never Eat Alone, the book by Keith Ferrazzi. And I believe when we saw him back in the day speak, he talked about one of the first events that he did. And he looked up like the top 25 people that would be like an ideal, profile for this. And he called all of them, and he ended up making it a super successful event. I think it was him who told that story. I could be wrong, but one of the things I want to credit you with, Josh, is I agree that you are totally relationship driven, because I'd say probably every quarter, maybe a little bit more due to both being busy entrepreneurs and parents, you always text me and you're like, when are we meeting for breakfast next? And I've always thought like you are that person. And I imagine that you do that with other people that, you consider, in your mind, someone you want to build, a relationship with, that you're consistent in that. So I'd be curious to know, like, what are some of the things that you do when it comes to relationships? Are there any habits that you have?
You know what? Like, I think one of the best parts about being an entrepreneur is you get to pick who you work with. So back at Citi, right, whatever clients you were dealt with, whatever internal people you had to work with, you didn't get to choose it. And half the time they didn't really care. So now I'm in this spot where anybody could be a potential either investor or, there's something I can add value with. Cause I think that's the other piece about being an entrepreneur is, yeah, you're always looking at what you have going on as well, but it's about helping others too. And if you can help people that you like, grow their businesses. And I mean, Jeremy, anytime I hang out with you, I learn more because you have such a vast experience in the business space, whereas I'm kind of just real estate focused. You have a whole different world of industries you've worked with. So honestly, I enjoy going. You're probably one coffee ahead of me. That's the problem. I need to take a coffee before I meet you to get on the same page. But I just learned so much, and I think there's certain people out there that are magnets, and I wouldn't say I'm a magnet, but I would say you are because of the background you have. So it's easy to want to hang out with you. Plus, let's be honest, Jeremy, there's not many people in Middletown, Delaware that do what we do. So it's nice having someone within 20 minutes that can relate to being an entrepreneur. So I always enjoy hanging out with you. But honestly, outside of that, in terms of relationships, I just really enjoy being able to help people. Like we're putting on an investor event for the first time. A lot of it's family, a lot of it are friends. And I've just gotten to a stage where I feel like I finally have something that I can do to help people, especially when I think about my family and my friends that are getting older and nearing retirement. Like what we offer is a great way of life, honestly, for them, right? They're getting to a point where they're looking to replace some income that they've had. Now they're looking at the next phase of life of, all right, I have Social Security, I have my retirement accounts. Like, what can I live on each month to replace that, big W-2 that I'm now giving up? So I get really excited knowing that I can help people, either replace some income that they were used to, be able to enjoy their golden years. I think I'm really happy with where things have ended up. So each day I wake up excited thinking, all right, who else can I help? How are my investors doing? I just have one lady I actually bought my new house from. She invested with us after knowing me for like 3 months. I bought the house from her. We connected a little bit. She found out I was in real estate and she was like, I've been waiting to find someone who, is a stand-up guy, says what they're going to do and is actually trustworthy. You're the guy I'm going to finally do it with. You're the one I'm going to invest in real estate with. And I realized there's not really many of those around. And if I don't spread the word and try and meet these people, where else are they going to go? They might go to someone that they see on Instagram that doesn't do anything. So I have a void that I have to fill, and that encourages me to continue to get out there because I'm not really the most. I'm more of an introvert, I would say, by trade, forced to be an extrovert now.
Well said.
Interesting.
There's a phrase, I think is it amnivert? There's an in between. Is that right, Jeremy? Is that ambivert? I feel like I'm in the pocket.
Yeah, you are. I think it's ambivert, but I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah. Yes. So there's something in between. But what's great is though what I hear in what you're saying though, Josh, is like you have a sense of service orientation, right? Wanting to help, you've said the word value, wanting to add all of that. So, while it is true that business, it is based on deals and transactions. It's very much a relationship, though business, if you think of the trust, right? The traction, keeping your word, having the business do that. And then also, I think the need out there of wanting the relationship and as a basis of trust, because there are a lot of, you're right, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it. And, get on board, like the marketing of FOMO, fear of missing out, is like, wow, it's loud, right? You need to get in on this now. You got to get in on that now. I've got the secrets, do this and that. And so I think it's, on the one hand, people are like, I need to do something, but they also, this could be a significant savings for them, right? And they need it. And so the fact that you're able to capitalize in the best way of both this need, right, and desire, but also to do it from this heart-based, mission-driven service orientation, I think that goes a long way. That represents, the business is a reflection of the owner idea. And so as you grow and you are continuing to add, teammates, making sure that they're also part of that mission and value exchange, that it's lifted beyond you personally, but also to them.
Gosh, you nailed it. You nailed it.
It's interesting too. You said the person that you bought your house from became an investor, and qualities like stand-up guy, does what he says he's going to do, your word. And I think that echoes back to what you were saying of who you were as growing up and as a student, even hardworking, always working to get the best grade. But what's interesting is I come from the background of, kind of being the rebel, wanting to break the rules. And I certainly, in my line of work, I'm kind of the change agent, sometimes break glass. But I think the unifying thing that you said was, being of service to others and wanting to help. And to me, that's a rare quality, I think, sometimes in this world, or we're always seeing things being projected in the negative, whether it's on social media or in the news. And so finding people, that's probably why you and I get along so well, because we're entrepreneurial and we're trying to make our own path, but we're also trying to be of service to others. So there's almost like a truth or almost like an ethics alignment there around how we operate just as human beings. I think that's the same for you, Wendy. I think that's why you and I connected too. I think the more that our individual lights come together in the world, the more that, we can change the world for a better, even though it can oftentimes feel negative.
Integrity's big. Integrity's big for sure. So you mentioned, Josh, and I don't know if this has been part of it. This might have been our pre-talk a little bit, but this idea of balance, right? And, also the father to 3 very young boys. I was going to say young men, but we know they're babies. And then this kind of idea of balance. So, talk a little bit about really, what is the ideal for you, what that looks like, and, how that desire also influences how you're approaching your business for yourself and your business partner and, any stakeholder really.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big life memories, I'd say, is that my parents were always at every game of mine, no matter what. I was always fortunate. If I had a game at 3:30, one of my parents was there. Usually, my dad, who had his children, he was there. So it didn't really dawn on me why that was, right? Because not everyone's parents were there. So I kind of knew at an early age, like, how important it was to me. I want my kids to have the support. If you have a bad game, they're there to support you. So that always resonated with me. And it wasn't until I got to the W-2 world that I realized, that's never going to happen here. No shot. So that's kind of been my motto all along, is that I want to make sure that I don't miss any important moments. I say I don't, my wife will probably laugh at me, but I definitely balance, but I still, have to work because I'm excited by what I do. So you have these two conflicting things. Like, I look out in my yard right now, right? I haven't watered it all year. There's been no rain in 2 weeks, and how quickly things can die. So I'm always kind of balancing out watering the company, watering the employees, watering my kids, making sure everything's growing and being nurtured. It's easier said than done. So I've tried to, time block's important. So I know I really don't book anything from like outside of this, because, Jeremy is someone I definitely admire. So I'd say after like 3:30, I usually don't have any meetings. So that way, when my kids get home by 3 or 3:30, I usually pick them up from school and take them. So I'm able to kind of carve out these times. And then from like 8:30 to 3, I just jam pack anything I want to do. If someone wants to meet with me, or if I'm trying to meet with someone, I try to squeeze it in there. And then, outside of that, I try to not go on my phone, which is probably the hardest thing of all of them, right? Because a lot of business nowadays goes through your phone. And being a relationship guy, I want to be able to answer people when they need me. But at the same time, my wife tells me, hey, you might want to get off your phone. Beckham's trying to talk to you. It's 5:00. Like, it's time to put it down. So I try to put my phone on like a do not disturb from, I'd say, 5 to 6:30, just to give me some alone time without being distracted.
That's great.
Easier said than done. Doesn't mean I do it every time,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to be intentional with it. And I think that's the key, is knowing that it's there, knowing that you need to do it. And, my wife holds me accountable to do so.
Great.
Yeah, it's interesting when you live a purpose-driven work life. It fills you up to do the work that you do, and it
Hmm.
doesn't drain you. And I've heard many people say, "How do you work 50 plus hours a week?" And I was like, "Because it's fun."
Yeah.
But when 5 o'clock hits, I mean, Ryland's 4 now, and I have to imagine the way she stares at Super Kitties on Disney is reflective of it's a mirror, just showing me how I am. And so as she's gotten older, I'm moving from I want her to see me working hard to I want to be present. And I'm pretty sure we're probably very similar spectrum of not being on our phones versus being on our phones, given the age similarities of our kids. But it's always a balance when you have work that you love.
Yeah, one thing, Jeremy, you reminded me of not too long ago. So when I had a newborn 7 months ago, obviously your schedule goes all out of whack, right? So
So, yeah.
I'm now finally getting back into, look, the only alone time I get is either 8 o'clock at night, but then who really wants to hang out with you? Your spouse. So don't really want to overlap that. It's the morning. So I know Jeremy wakes up super early. So I've gotten back on to look, wake up at 5. You have at least an hour on your own before anybody in the house wakes up. Use that really for myself, right? Get myself right, get my mindset right, remember what I'm doing it all for. And then when everyone wakes up, I'm ahead of the game. So that's been big for me recently, being able to get back into a groove. And I think everybody needs that because once you have kids, your time gets stretched everywhere. Everybody needs something from you. Same thing with business. Everybody needs something from you. And you do need to carve out some time for yourself.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, it is 5 o'clock Eastern time, and
Hey, it's quiet over here. I'm shocked.
I'm waiting for you to get shot with a Nerf gun for your 3-year-olds. But yeah, listen, that last question that we always like to ask is, what's on your mind lately? There's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. Markets are crazy. AI's crazy. Everything is changing. So, as an entrepreneur, what are you thinking about to kind of sum up or finish out the podcast today?
I think right now is more important than ever to be conservative. I think at least in my space, there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of geopolitical things going on. I think everyone just needs to be cautious that things could swing either direction. So make sure you have some chips available for yourself because opportunities may come from it. So I know, I'm being a lender. That's kind of my front of my head is at any moment something could go wrong, and what am I going to do? So how do I hedge myself in a way to protect myself to be careful in case it does? Because really, as much as control you think you have, I think we've learned, for years on years on years over, we really don't. So you just have to be ready and prepared if something does happen, that you're in a good situation for it. So that's kind of been my line of sight is be ready and don't get caught with your pants down.
What's kind of consistent about that as well is, if I saw correctly, you got a degree in accounting. Mm-hmm. Right? And I remember hearing for years, I worked with a lot of accountants, and kind of the chief accountant, although he had stopped working in his business for some years before, but he said accountants are risk adverse, right? They're not risk takers because they're very aware of all that. So it's very interesting to balance that aspect. At the same time, you have to take you're taking a certain amount of risk by being in business as it is. And so it's just really, kind of just being conscious of both of those, I suppose. And on the one hand, what's great is even what you described, you once again made your services, right, to your clients more comfortable because you are talking about, hey, we need to be conservative. We need to think about what we're doing. We're going to take care of it. I'm concerned about that as well. And we want to be ready for opportunity at the same time, which again increases their confidence in you, where there are a lot of, entrepreneurs or salespeople, they operate predominantly. And it's like they're just painting a very rosy picture. It'll happen, move fast. This is what it's going to take. So I'm thinking that you have a unique approach to the market a bit with that accounting as part of the backdrop, around it. Is that true?
No, you're right. And I think that's why me and my partner, Alex, have a good relationship, because I'd say he goes up the pendulum and I kind of bring us back down. So we have a good equal, share, but that's how we get to hold each other accountable. And we make sure that, we are looking at things both sides, and then we make the right decision. So I would definitely agree. I lean that way for sure.
That's good.
It's interesting.
Partnership.
I was ready to ask the devil's advocate question of, be conservative right now, deploy capital if something goes bump in the night and the market's reset, right? I mean, that's like Warren Buffett 101. Like, you make money when the markets are bleeding, essentially. So it's almost being conservative so as to not catch a falling knife, but then be ready to, catch that knife at the bottom, and investment opportunities. So that's great. It's awesome. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for obviously, taking the time, because after 3, I know it's family time. Really appreciate you jumping on the podcast today.
I appreciate you having me. I know it's been a long time coming. And now I think I have to go outside in the 90-degree heat and play at the park. So pray for me. Okay? I'm going to go slip some water. I think I'd rather extend this a little bit longer to avoid it, but I'm going to buckle up and do it.
Well, thank you. And tell Jamie thank you as well. Really appreciate it.
Will do.
Thanks,
all right, guys. Thank you.
Right.
Talk soon.